Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the newly much anticipated Lilo and Stitch live action film from Disney. Of course, Disney has had their fair share of trips along the way as of late with live action films, but Stitch is a very, very popular character both on the big screen and from a merchandise perspective. So now we have the live action version of Lilo and Stitch, and we went and saw it and we get to tell you whether it's good or if you should wait for this on Disney Plus. So we're gonna talk about non-spoilers first, then we'll give the movie a rating, and then we'll talk about spoilers. And I would say right off the bat that I think this is probably one of the best live action films that Disney has put out of their remakes as of late. I'm a big fan of Beauty and the Beast, a little bit biased because it's my favorite one, so I will always probably think that that's the top one. But if you think about all the ones we've had lately, we've had Snow White, we've had Mufasa. Um, what was before Mufasa?
Well, Mufasa's not even a live action remake, it's an original movie, right?
It's basically up that same alley.
Yeah.
Let's see. I can tell you it's way better than the Mulan.
I'm looking at our movie list and I almost said Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. That is
Uh,
not a Disney movie.
yeah, not quite. Let's see. Oh, Pete's Dragon is definitely better than that one. Uh, I don't know. I can't see the chronological ones. But anyways, so yeah, this has definitely been one of the better movies as of late. Um, oh yeah, Little Mermaid, definitely better than Little Mermaid. We
Mulan,
we did not what?
Mulan and Aladdin were both somewhat recent.
Yeah, better than Mulan. I would say better than Aladdin. We haven't seen the Peter and Wendy movie yet. Um,
Pinocchio.
Pinocchio, I'd say it was better than Pinocchio. So, needless to say, it's been the best one in a good handful of years by far. Um, that doesn't mean that this movie doesn't have its issues, because there are a couple of, I would say, striking things to it, but I think you only really you'd only really notice it. One, if you are trying to compare it to the original, which I know a lot of people will be. But two, there's this other side of this equation that I think is super important to understand. Because if you go to see this movie, you are going to notice there's a lot of things that are cut, and there's a lot of things that were altered that I think are for budget purposes. So let's give a little bit of perspective here before we start talking about a handful of these, I would say, budget things that are popping up in the movie. The original Lilo and Stitch movie, when it came out, I believe it had about an $80 million budget. And if you adjust that for inflation, the budget for the original was 115 million. Again, adjusted number. So that because we have the adjusted number, we can compare it to what's going on with this live action film. The live action film's budget was 100 million. So it was less than the original. How do we do budget? I was actually surprised that it was $100 million for the budget. Like I would have thought for Lilo and Stitch it would have been easily like 150 to 200. However, if we know what's in the movie and talk about some of the things that are missing or changed, it makes a lot more sense. So we are in non-spoilers, so we're going to talk about some of the non-spoiler type things that, are this budget issue. One of them is that Gantu is not in this movie at all. And if you remember the original, there is a very big like spaceship sequence with Gantu that where he's kind of like going up against Lilo and Stitch and whatnot, and so if Gantu's not in the movie, I bet you can imagine what happened to that scene. But also, and this is probably the one that bothered me the most, was that our two characters. So like when Stitch goes to Earth, of course, the other two characters, Jumba and who's the other one?
Bleakley.
Pleakley, they go to, try to recover Stitch. And what really bothered me in this movie is that they find to blend in, they use like this cloning technology where they look like humans. And so what they do is they see these two humans, they touch them, and then they look like that human. And they stay like that for almost the entire film. So they're trying to get away with not having to pay for CGI characters because they have this other idea of making them look like normal humans. Not a big fan of that. Although I do like this actor, Zach Galifianakis. How do you spell it?
Galifianakis.
There you go. Um, Although I do really like Zach in other films, I did not care for Zach one bit in this movie. The voice definitely didn't. I mean, you don't have to be one to one with um, Jamba,
Jumba.
but Jumba,
Isn't it Jumba?
I looked it up and I wrote it down. It's Jumba.
Okay.
So. Uh, The voice doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I was hoping for a little bit of an accent out of Jumba in this movie. So some of the issues there. What are some other ones? There were scenes that were, like I said, that were just completely cut. A lot of them having to do with, would there be a CGI element there or not? Um,
Well, even when the aliens were on screen, Pleakley looks atrocious, in my personal opinion. And you can see this in the trailer. The moment that I saw him, I was like, that's really how they made him look. Like his eye looks glassy, almost like it's made out of glass. Like it doesn't look right.
I would say like if I were to pick one of the aliens that didn't look the greatest, I'd probably pick that character. But I personally didn't really have any issues with the way they looked. I don't
I
really,
mean Pleakley specifically. I really didn't like the way his eye looked. He didn't it looked too glossy, like he was crying or something, but it was just weird.
I don't know. I I didn't have that feeling. Uh, Let's just get all the cons out of the way, and then we'll talk about some of the really good things. So, we talked about the budget, scenes were cut. We talked about Gantu. One of the things I also thought was kind of weird was there's some like iconic moments from Lilo and Stitch, and one of them that I thought of in particular, like once I saw how they were trying to mimic it on screen, I was like, oh, this is that moment. But then they like rushed it and cut it short. And that was when Stitch first lands on Earth, and there's like this green smoke behind him, and he looks like a menacing creature almost in the animated film. Here, it was like they rushed it so fast, it made me feel like there were, and it's not just this scene, there's other scenes too, where I felt like the creators were thinking, oh, the audience, they love these scenes, they've seen them tons of times, and so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this part of the movie faster. We're gonna get through these parts that people love because people are just gonna look at them for a second and say, oh, I love that. That's from the original, and then they can get on with other scenes. And this was one I thought in particular that they really shouldn't have done that with. I think they should have let that scene go a little bit longer, actually try to make it look like he's that creepy creature in front of the smoke. But it was just so quick that I felt like before I could enjoy it, it was already over. Um, and there is some merit to the idea of getting through some of these scenes quick to make up for other ones because there is other stuff that is new in this movie that wasn't in the original. So like that. Also, the part where in the original Stitch puts his fingernail like on the vinyl record and he sings the "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" by Elvis. That's not in the movie. The song is not in the movie. Where he puts his finger on the vinyl, that is in the movie, but they changed the song. And whenever you would see a commercial of Lilo and Stitch, like that was part of it. So they know from the original that that is a big moment. And so I thought it was really weird that that was altered. All right, we already kind of talked about the third act, how like that the spaceship is not there. We have not talked about what they replaced it with, and we are not going to do that until we get to spoilers. Uh, didn't like Jumba's voice. Let's see, did not like the two aliens were human most of the time. The snow cone guy, the snow cone guy is like iconic in the original. I felt like they didn't really do him justice in this movie, and the reason why I think that is because of the way they shot it. In the original, like when they would shoot it, it would be like really quick, like almost like awkward silence kind of a thing, and you see like the snow cone like dramatically drop. I don't know, it just didn't work for me in this live action film. It felt like the writers had to put him in there because he was, one of those iconic things of the original. But it's one of those things that they didn't spend much time on. They zipped through it because they knew people would see it. They loved the 2 seconds that they saw it, and then they would just keep moving. It's kind of like a cameo appearance that probably should have had a little bit more, a couple more seconds on the screen. And then the last one that I have, and I don't know if you have other ones, Mr.
I do.
Bubbles. Mr. Bubbles should have never been changed. The original actor looks just like Mr. Bubbles. Why was he changed? And so that's one of the other really big things that I wasn't a fan of was that Mr. Bubbles was changed. Um, what kind of things did you not like? And then we're gonna move on to the things that we really did like.
I feel like this movie turned Lilo and Stitch from a mostly happy movie. Now, I understand there's some sad tones in the original, but I feel like this one played it way more serious and way more depressing for a lot of the um, social worker type aspects of it. And I feel like it's probably the modernization of the film, but at the same time, it is a children's movie. I don't think it should really be that serious.
They definitely modernized this. Like they even took out all the guns and basically replaced there's no laser blasters or guns in this movie. They have a portal gun
Dart
and
gun.
a what?
A dart gun.
Yeah, and that was the second one I was gonna say. Like tranquilizer darts.
Yep. Um, there's one of the really sad moments, I think, is a direct copy paste from a recent Disney film, and I'm gonna leave it vague like that until we get to spoilers, but it really bothered me that it did get me. Like, don't get me wrong, it made me cry. It still was emotional. I feel like it's good that it was emotion provoking, but at the same time, I thought it was lazy how it was a direct copy paste from a very recent film of theirs. And I'll dive more into that in the spoilers.
Not
But
to
the other thing,
mention, not to mention that it replaced something that probably would have been really cool to see in the movie.
yeah, the other thing that I'm gonna mention, and this is more related in a direct comparison to the old one. I know a lot of these have been, but this one I think is like a real direct comparison, is David's character.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that too.
He went from like kind of like a bumbling idiot who's so much in love and like, trips over his words and does all crushy goo goo gaga over her in the original.
But in a good way, because David is a
Right,
good
like
character in
in
the
a
original.
cute way, but in this one, they'd way downplayed that. He's barely in it. We don't really get to see him a whole lot at all. There's some teeny little lines that he has that are, still him tripping over his words and kind of like the idea of what he's supposed to be, but I feel like they didn't do him justice at all.
I would agree. I mean, I could have blinked and missed this, but I could have sworn in the original he was like a pyro, and I don't remember seeing him doing, like things with fire and whatnot.
I may have missed this also, but I don't remember seeing anybody handle fire in this one.
I remember some sort of nighttime like festival scene in a way, like maybe like a quick shot of something, but I don't recall David specifically doing that stuff.
I feel like it was another one of those budget cut things
Could
because
have
you
been.
have to be highly trained to be able to handle fire like that.
Could have been. Let's see. Any
That's the
others
end of my
that
list for things that bother me.
all right. Okay, so let's talk about some good things. So I personally, I think Disney was trying to be strategic with this movie. As far like I was talking about how it had a lower budget, way lower than I thought it was going to be. And with the following of Stitch, I could easily see this kind of being Disney's version of Sonic right now, where they, try to do a couple of sequels out of it and try to build on it and bring in other characters. But I will say, if they want to do that, they're going to have to go back to this movie being bigger than it was. Because the animated film definitely had some bigger scenes than what was present here. So, one of my positives is I think this movie is going to be big enough where they're able to make some more of them. I thought the actress for Lilo was amazing. She did great. I thought they got Stitch right. We didn't have that Sonic moment where we're like, whoa, 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 clean that up. So I thought Stitch looked really good.
Thank goodness for that because I really didn't like Pleakley, but at least Stitch looked good.
Yeah, and we had the original voice actor for Stitch. So that was nice to have him back. Uh, Hawaiian roller coaster ride, it hit. It wasn't like some previous Disney movies where it's like, yo, you messed up the original song. What in the world? That didn't happen here. I think the Hawaiian roller coaster ride was very well done. Uh, Out of all those CGI characters, I thought the Grand Council woman looked the best. I thought she was like her character was done really well. I mean, there's a lot of fairly intricate things with her character, like with her outfit. And so I think that character was done the best.
I would agree.
Let's see, what else? Those are the couple that I jotted down.
I thought
Um,
that Jumbo looked okay. When he first spoke, and then I realized his voice wasn't nearly as deep as what I was expecting, I was like, whoa.
yeah,
But at
that
least he looked pretty decent to me.
the unfortunate part out of that is that it was right away. And so right out of the gate, and I saw and I heard that, I was like, ooh, I don't know about this. But um, going back to positives. So I thought it was good that this movie like jumps right into it. Like maybe that's how the original did it too, but this movie like got to it immediately. It was specifically it was a Tuesday and they had Stitch. It was almost like the old Stitch ride slash show back in the day at Disney World, where Stitch is kind of in that little container and they're talking about, what to do with him. So they got right into the movie with all that stuff. It seemed like it was within minutes that, you know, we were heading to Earth and Lilo was interacting with Stitch and all that good stuff. Um, so I liked that. I liked how the movie just kind of got to it. Unfortunately, on the con side of it, I thought it was bad that they kind of rushed some of it, but I'm glad they just kind of got to it. What are some of the things that you liked?
It's interesting how they rushed so many different things, but it's still like approximately, what is it, 20 minutes longer? 23 minutes longer?
That's surprising.
Yeah, it's 23 minutes longer than the original,
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
according to IMDb. Um, my biggest praise I think for this is just that they got Stitch right. Like that is such a crucial character, and I'm really glad we didn't have another Sonic situation because that was rough. Um, I wish we could have seen him a little bit more in his like chaotic alien type form.
mhm.
Uh, I wish we could have seen more aliens just in general. I did get used to Blakely and Jumbo. Excuse me. I did get used to them being in their human form, and in their human form, I thought they were all right. For what it was, I thought they did fine. I just I wish they would have been more alien, in disguise like in the original, but for what it was, I thought they did okay, if that makes any sense. Like it's not really what I would have chose and it's not what I wanted, but it was okay.
Say it makes sense. I just wholeheartedly disagree.
Yeah. It's not what I would have picked, but for what it was, I thought it was fine. The movie kept my attention, and I thought for the most part that it was a pretty fun ride. I really liked the antics that they would get into and just the back and forth between Lilo and Stitch. Like it's one thing to animate, a person with an alien, but this girl was working with, like I'm assuming they had some sort of like puppet or something so that she knew where to look, but she wasn't really acting with anybody because he's CGI, he's fake. Like just to get that kind of acting out of that young of a kid, she did amazing. So big praises to her.
Yeah, I would agree. Um, yeah, I was trying to think of something else. Oh, I was gonna say another th I remembered another thing that was cut. The bully was cut from the
She's
original.
still in there.
Not as much. I mean, she was in that one scene.
Yeah, she was definitely not in it as much. But Lilo does still push her off the stage just like in the original. I'm pretty sure that's in the original.
Right, but I thought there was a scene in the original where she was like, "Ew, what's that?" And it was Stitch, and Leo's like, "It's my dog." And you know, I thought,
I I do think some of her stuff was cut, but she is still in there, period.
gotcha.
Sorry, I thought you were saying her character entirely was missing.
Well, I don't even think the girl was redheaded, but I don't know.
Was Isn't her name like Myrtle or something like that?
I do not know. I know
Yeah,
she had glasses.
she doesn't look the same. I can definitely agree to that. Yeah, her name's Myrtle.
Well, I think we've talked enough with the non-spoilers. So let's go ahead and give the movie a rating. Again, I think it's the best Disney live action remake that has come out as of late. I think it's probably one of the better movies I've seen this year yet. So I think I'm gonna go with an 8 out of 10 on this one. There's a lot of things that I wish they would have kept in this movie, and I wish they would have spent a little bit more money to get, all of the awesome things that was in the original film. And I also wish they would have been a little bit more consistent with their characters, with keeping some of the originals. A lot of the people from the original are in this movie, but they play different characters. So why not bring back Mr. Bubbles or Gantu? Gantu is huge, literally and figuratively. So, um, yeah, I'm at an 8.
I am at a 7 out of 10. I know we talked a lot about the negative pieces and probably not nearly as long of time about the positives. Overall, I did enjoy the movie, and coming out of this movie, I was thinking more like an 8, but the longer I thought about it and really kind of digested what I saw and the would I watch it again factor and the honestly the huge social worker impact of this, just I feel like it really brought down the movie a lot. Not having Gantu was a big problem for me, and the sad part that I thought was a copycat of a recent Disney film, that again I'll get into that when we get into spoilers, that really bothered me once I realized that it's the same formula. So I'm bringing it down to a 7. I feel like it's still a pretty solid movie. It's just it's not as fantastic as what I thought when I first came out of the theater.
And let's remind ourselves a 5 would be average. So we both agree it's above average. Um, Me an 8, Sarah a 7. So, all right, time for some spoilers. So, this movie, like I said, it kicks off just like the original one does, where we head right into it with this experiment 626. Stitch is kind of on trial and basically gets exiled. He escapes prison. They do the same exact thing where, he's in this little jail area and the like turrets are attached to his like DNA, whatever it is, and he plays with his spit and finds out that the turrets will follow his spit, and so he spits out towards a guard. The whole 9 yards. But there is a very, very key piece of information here in the beginning that we need to know for the ending of the movie. And that is when Stitch basically, escapes and he heads towards Earth. The other alien, so the Grand Council woman, she notices that Stitch is heading towards Earth. And she sees on the picture that it's covered in water. And she says, well, that'll be just fine because when he has water mixed with his molecular density, whatever it is, basically it'll cause him to, drown. He'll stay in the water and he'll stay there. Um,
He gets heavier density, so he gets to be too heavy. He can't float.
right. However, then they see on the screen that his trajectory is for a small island. So they're like, oh crap. And so they have to send, a recon unit, which is our two other aliens. So we know that majority of the film, but I wanted to point out the important piece here about the density.
I thought Bleakley had a fu pretty funny joke here, and I don't know if it's in the original or not, but I don't remember it from the original, but I could have just missed it. It's been a while since I've seen the original, but he's the Earth expert, right? Like he's been studying Earth and specifically the fashion of Earth,
Oh,
and he makes a funny comment about how they've been using Earth to regrow the mosquito population. I'm just like, you would pick that scab, wouldn't you? Like we hate the mosquitoes, and they're just overabundance.
that is something that's brought up in the original. I thought you were going to talk about his cowboy joke.
Oh yes, he also said something about how he was studying an interspecies between a cow and a boy, and he was dressed up like Woody from Toy Story.
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre. Um, but yeah, let's see. I think we should probably focus more on, what is new or different from this movie because probably the majority of the people watching this have already seen the original. Like we said, one of the big pieces is that Gantu is missing, and that means that whole like towards the end of the movie is gone, right? The spaceship thing is gone. Um, and they have to find other things to do to fill in that time. So one of the things is this other little subplot of, Nani has to make sure that she can prove to the social worker that everything is fine in the house and that Lilo, is in a sufficient home. And one of the new big pieces here, wasn't it that she has to have like health insurance and she has to get a job? There was something that was like new there.
So there's the social worker in general, Mrs. Kakoa. She's actually that actress is who voiced Nani in the original. So that's kind of cool that she was brought back. But her that whole character of that specific social worker is new. And I know that there's like a social worker type aspect in the original, but I feel like they really amplified and cranked it in this one. But yeah, she said what was it, a list of three things. One was to clean the house and fill the fridge with food. One was to pay all the bills that were on the table, and then the other one was to get health insurance for Lilo. She said you got to do that by Friday. Mind you, in the movie,
It was
the current
Tuesday.
day is Tuesday, so she's got like 3 days to get all that done, which seems impossible.
Yeah. She'd have to get some serious money really quick. And I'm not suggesting anything, but Disney, it's kind of hard to get that kind of money in a couple of days. What are we trying to plot here? But yeah, so the social worker is a new component here. Let's see. How Lilo comes to get Stitch, that was basically the same. He crashes on the Earth. They very much speed right through him, landing there and with the smoke. I think the wedding scene is a little, I think that's new, where Stitch sees cake, like wedding cake, and he like um disrupts a wedding. So I think that was new. But he does end up at a dog shelter where Lilo wants to adopt a dog, finds Stitch, and has to have him because, you know, when she's getting ready for bed, she sees a quote unquote shooting star, even though we all know that that was Stitch's ship crashing. Um, we talked about there's that bully character, although she only shows up like one time in the beginning of the movie.
I'm pretty sure Pudge was a fish that she had at home. Like she fed him a sandwich in like a fish bowl, and in this one, she put a sandwich in the ocean for Pudge, which I don't know how she'd even know what fish Pudge is if it's in the ocean because there's so many different fish around. But that was, I believe, a different twist on that.
I don't know.
I'm gonna focus on the social worker for just a second because I feel like we can kind of wrap up her character, as an overall arc is one of the big things that she keeps pushing Nani for is to basically put Lilo in some sort of foster care type system where towards the end, she's really kind of almost wanting to comply because she wants what's best for Lilo and she doesn't think that she's a good. See, this is what bothered me too, is I feel like in the original she fought harder for her, and then this one it's almost like she's giving up, but long story short, the neighbor, which is
The original
uh
grandma character.
Tutu and I want to say David. I think they both live there. I think that's David's mom, although I'm not entirely sure. Um, but basically the neighbors, yeah. So Leela goes to live with them so that in the end Nani can go to marine biology school. So she is kind of in the foster care system, but she has a foster home it's almost like a way for her neighbors to become her guardians, even though they're not really her guardians because they're her foster family. So I mean, it's not like Lilo gets ripped from her and, has to go to a group home or anything that's that serious, but at the same time, it is a social worker trying to convince her of like, you're not good enough to handle taking care of this child. And I don't know, it was such a serious and sad tone that I just feel really wasn't necessary for this style of movie.
Yeah, I feel like that character could have been cut and maybe would have made the movie a little bit more concise. Um,
It's new to this remake, so clearly we can have a nice movie without it.
right. I mean, and it does add to the ending a little bit, you know, given how so at the end they end up being separated because Nani goes to study being a marine biologist. And you know Lilo is at home. She's being watched over by Mr. Bubbles, and they is it's a good way to cue this in. Like they have the portal guns that we talked about in the beginning, where they can like create portals, and then they can still see each other from across whatever. I don't know where Nani ended up being, but um
I
they just
think I think online they said University of San Diego. I think that's
oh
where she went to school.
so yeah,
So
then
California compared to
definitely far
Hawaii.
away. Let's see what else is going on with the movie.
Shall we talk about the Moana 2 remake?
Yeah, you're welcome to. 'Cause you're a little bit
So
more passionate about it than I am.
this is the sad part that's a remake of a recent Disney film that I've been bringing up a couple times. If you recall from Moana 2, spoiler for Moana 2 if you have not seen it yet. Moana basically dies and almost comes back to life, right? Because she drowns and somebody brings her back up to the shoreline and they think she's dead and then magically she, you know, regains consciousness. And I might have the exact details slightly off because I think she stayed underwater and there was a big air bubble or something. But long story short, she, drowned and then thought was dead and then came back to life. That's what happens to Stitch in this film. And it still got me because it took me by surprise. I did cry for this. I'm not a big crier. It just, I think the surprise element was what really got me. But when uh Jumba and Pleakley have Stitch on their ship, and Lilo is hiding on that ship, and they're because they don't know that she's there, but they're trying to take Stitch back to the alien planet, and they crash in the ocean. I don't remember what makes them crash, do you?
Wasn't she like pushing a bunch of random buttons and then it like blew out one of the engines or something?
Very well could be, yes. We'll go with that.
Because
So
Stitch
they
was like
crash in the
pointing at a
ocean.
thing and
Yep, so they crash in the ocean, and as Jeremy alluded to earlier, Stitch, when he gets wet, he gets very dense, very heavy. So she's trying to, she's a good swimmer, and so she's trying to bring him back up to, the airline, but he's too heavy for her. She can't lift him because he's getting more and more dense. And so she makes it out, and Nani goes down there to try to get him, and she can't bring him up. And so she winds up walking along the sand underwater to get to the shoreline, which I don't know how she could have possibly held her breath that long, but just rule of cool, as their friend Austin would say, just let it be. She walks along the sand line to get to the shore. And you think that he's dead. I mean, they're trying to use an AED to jumpstart his heart. They try to use jumper cables from the truck to try to jumpstart his heart. You think he's dead. And it's the exact same thing as Moana 2, where if somebody freaking drowns, you think that they're dead, and then, a minute or two later, they come back to life. Like, when this first happened, it really got me, and it made me very sad and very emotional. And I feel like if a movie can evoke emotions like that, that's really powerful and usually a sign of a good film. But then when I got home and I thought more about it and I realized that's the exact same thing they did in Moana 2, which came out 6 months ago, so not very long ago. That's kind of a cheap move. Like, that's new to this film, that's not in the original film, but that's the exact same thing they just did in a recent movie. Like, what are you doing?
honestly, I just think it was one of those budget things where they were like, okay, well, we don't want to put money into this whole spaceship scene, so, and we don't want to put money into a CGI Gantu, but we can put CGI into this underwater scene where we only have a little bit of Stitch that we see in her arms. And I think also just kind of I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's also just not super believable that, well, okay, never mind. I was gonna say something. So one of the things in this movie is that Lilo thinks that um Nani wants to go to the military because she says Marine, when really she wants to be a marine biologist. Okay. And what I was going to say is that it kind of made more sense that Nani could hold her breath that long because, people in the military, they do the breathings. I think it depends on the branch of military, where they go like in the pool and they stay down there for a long time and then come back up. But I don't think I would agree that she would be underwater that long and work that hard and be able to do it all in one breath. I don't know.
We do know that she's an excellent surfer because that winds up being one of the jobs that she gets is to be a surf instructor, and she used to love surfing and whatnot. So, I mean, I can understand her being good at holding her breath, but I still feel like for as far down in the ocean as they were, for her to walk along the shoreline for that long while carrying Stitch, who's super, super like ridiculously heavy because of his density issue, I feel like it's too many combinations. There's no way she would have made it.
That might have been a way that she could have gotten the money um for paying for health insurance and all that because if you're an instructor, you could charge the money right then and there. Like you wouldn't have to do a normal weekly job where you get paid on Friday kind of a thing.
I do think that she was able to get the money, but she wasn't able to get the health insurance.
Correct. And it's kind of an interesting way that I mean, I thought it was impactful the way that they conveyed that information was because Um, there's the scene, right, and I'm pretty sure this was in the original, where, Stitch doesn't want to get wet, and he gets in the water and he's trying to stay above the water, and so he's like pushing Lilo down, trying to avoid going in the water. And from this, she goes to the doctors, and the doctor says, "Oh, she's going to be just fine. Just, send over your health insurance information." And that's, when we get the, "Oh crap, she didn't get the insurance."
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like you're probably good to just skip to the ending of why he can stay on Earth.
yeah, so Stitch gets exiled by the councilwoman and says, "You're exiled to Earth." I mean, it's pretty quick, but I'm trying to think if there's really anything else that was super huge to mention in the movie. I think we covered the majority of the changes.
You want to mention the cross-dressing or lack of?
Oh yeah, so that was kind of one of the funny things from the original is that, our little alien friend from time to time would wear women's clothing. And in this one, didn't wear a single outfit. So I thought that was kind of weird. Honestly, what bothered me the most was that they were human for so long. I think they should have put more money into this movie, made them CGI way more, and also had Gantu and that spaceship. I think that probably would have pushed them to 150 or 175, and of course that means that the amount of money that they have to make back would increase significantly. But, you know, some of that stuff, it's worth it. Let's see what rating it has on Rotten Tomatoes. On Rotten Tomatoes, oh, it's doing pretty well. 68% critic, which is with a tomato, and it's 93% for the popcorn meter. So it's doing well on the Rotten Tomatoes. And
IMDb has a 7.1 out of 10.
I'm pretty sure this movie is gonna make a good chunk of money. If not on the movie itself, definitely on the merchandise. So um yeah. So overall, I think it was a good movie. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with that they changed or got rid of. But at the end of the day, it is one of the best Disney live action films as of late. And, on its own, from its own interpretation of the original film, I think it's all right. And there really wasn't anything to be disappointed about. So, um, and honestly, I don't really believe anybody is going into this movie thinking, "Oh my God, is this going to be better than the original?" The original is like hands down a 10 out of 10 film. I don't really think you're going to be able to get around that one. So, um, I think it's just good that they delivered a quality product. It may not have been, you know, crazy amazing, I would say, but it was a quality product. So, all right, that was our talk on the new Lilo and Stitch film. If you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are doing movie reviews quite often, so check us back here. Drops a like if you liked the video and drops a comment letting us know what your thoughts were on the new Lilo and Stitch live action film. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.